Hey everyone, I'm Andrew,
I'm Kevin,
and this is Baker Nichols Show, episode 8.
and we're just gonna continue talking to you guys about like our tutoring experiences and maybe some like advice for teaching or what we want to implement when we're teachers and how we want our students to learn. So I guess Andrew's gonna talk to you guys a little bit about his tutoring experiences with his Algebra 1 student.
Yeah, so over the past couple of weeks, I've been helping out, obviously, a 8th grade student with Algebra 1, and he had a test this past week, and so his test was on solving for variables, variables on both sides of equations, setting up proportions and solving, and that was pretty much it, or, doing word problems and setting proportions that way. And so, the time we met before his test, I thought my student was very prepared. He could do any problem in the book without any problem at all. He could, he knew how to set the proportions, very well. But he he got back his test and he didn't do well at all. And he said he struggled because he didn't really understand what was being asked of him because the teacher asked the questions in a different format than the book did. And so my student just didn't really know how to understand what the question was asking correctly and just struggled that way. I mean, it was kind of tough to see because my student knew the math and everything, but he just didn't understand that the teacher was asking the same question just in slightly different words and everything.
Yeah, I guess it's just like the way the teacher was presenting the material was just like it was just different on the test than it was when the student was doing work with you. And like, I mean, that can happen too because it's just like I don't know. It's like they start to get comfortable with the work that they're doing, and like they see it a certain way in class, they see it a certain way in homework, and they just start getting used to that. So they develop a procedure for figuring out the answer to these problems. But then if they're asked like the same material that or like questions that cover the same content, but if they're presented in a different light, then like the student might shut down because he's not like as confident with the material as he thought he was. Like he might be comfortable with the material, but he's not confident with it. And that's like there's just like a subtle difference between the two of those things, like when it comes to students.
Yeah, and yeah, and so kind of an example of what I mean is so my student was trying to solve proportions, with percentages, and the problem that he got used to solving was what is 38% of 65? And he could easily do the 38 over 100 equals x over 65, and then cross multiply and solve. But the teacher on the test, was saying like, 17 is 28% of what number? And so you do the same exact thing. You set up the proportions. You do, um, you know, 28% over 100 equals 17 over x, but the x is just in a different area. But my student did not understand that, and so he, got a lot of points off for these percentages problems that he was doing great on because the teacher asked it in a slightly different way. And so um, Kevin and I were, discussing this, and as teachers, as tutors and teachers, we have to really expose our students to a lot of different types of the same question.
Yeah.
And so we can just prepare our students for, other teachers that may not ask in the same exact format we do, but also to expose our kids' minds to different types of thinking about the same problem.
Yeah, it's just like again, like going back to the process standards of math and talking about problem solving abilities, it's just like being able to see different questions, like having multiple representations for the same problem and being able to go about finding solutions to that problem in multiple ways as well. Another like more simple example, as like what Andrew was talking about before, is we were so when we talk about like finding like fractions or like he was talking about proportions, like if you find like a fraction of a number, the most like common way you see a problem is like, okay, like what is 1/3 of 6, or what is 1/3 of 6, and you'd take like 1/3 of 6, so you get 2. Well, if you ask that question a different way, if you say what is 2/3 of, then it's almost like the wording. It's almost kind of tricky. Like it kind of like tricks the mind a little bit because you're not used to hearing a question that way. You're used to hearing what is 1/3 of 6, not what is 2/3 of. But they're really asking you the same thing. Like what is 2/3 of? Oh, well, if 2 is a third of something, then I had to take a third of that to get 2. Well, I would need to do the opposite of that to get back to what that number is. So you would do 3 times 2, and then you would get 6.
Yeah.
So being able to see like we said before, being able to see multiple representations of the problem just lets our students be more. They just get more. I guess like they're more well-rounded in the math area that they're learning. So like we talked about, it's just like being a teacher, we want to pose our problem, like give our students like every weapon that they need, like give them all the questions that they need to know, so that if they're given a test, like they have that confidence level with the math that they're working on, that they can just proceed with the math and get the right answer. So I don't know.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of cool that we're talking about this because today in our class, our teacher had us. Our problem was you have a certain amount of quarters and dimes that are equal to $4, and
19,
you have, yeah,
you have 19 total coins.
Yeah, 19 total coins, and so right away she showed us 4 different methods we can use to solve this problem. It was graphing, solving it by graphing, solving it by substitution, solving it by elimination, and solving it by
Matrices.
Yeah, matrices, right. And so she split the classroom, and so that's just, our teacher did a great job of really exposing us as students to different ways of solving the same problem, and we went through all 4 different methods and how they all lead to the right answer. So if one kid, the good thing about this is that as teachers and as tutors, when we're doing this, if we teach a bunch of different methods to a problem, if students are uncomfortable with one method, they'll be able to do it in exactly another method.
Yeah.
And so like they won't feel uncomfortable with the material because they're like, all right, well, I'm not really comfortable with this way, but I know how to do it this way, and I still get the same thing. So I feel like we will improve students' confidence.
Definitely.
Because they have different tools at hand that they can use to solve certain problems. And I mean, I think Kevin and I have been, we want to teach because we had teachers that did that to us in general. They were very good at teaching us different ways to solve problems.
Yeah.
But, as tutors and teaching and seeing students now, we're realizing that we really have to make a conscious effort to really expose our students to a lot of different things because we don't think to do it.
Yeah.
I
mean, yeah, it just shows like, I guess it just shows like the flip side of what we were just talking about, how we want to pose our problems in different ways so that the students that are familiar with it, well, the students can give their solutions in many different ways too. Like, just because like a student might not get like the greatest answer on a test or whatever, like it might not be that he doesn't know the math that he's doing. It might be that the student's, like, the way he translates the math from his mind, the way he's thinking about it, to the way he puts it on paper, there's just something missing in that translation. So he might be good with the math and he might be able to do it. It's just a matter of like actually doing like properly in the way that we're used to seeing. Is like just like we were saying, like the way we're used to seeing a problem being asked to us might be different. The way that he gives an answer back might be different at the same time. So it's just like preparing ourselves as teachers to prepare them as students. Like there has to be some connection there, and that actually goes with an article that we read for class for one of our math classes that we're taking together. There's an article talking about how the way, like the goals that a teacher sets for his students, or his or her students, to learn has to match the goals or the methods that he uses while he teaches. I keep saying he, doesn't matter. But so like matching the way you teach with the way you want your students to learn is a very subtle art that teachers really need to develop, but it really goes hand in hand with student learning, because if you don't prepare your students to battle these different types of questions, then if you give them the different types of questions, they don't get it. Well, it's not entirely their fault. There has to be some responsibility with the teacher to make an effort to prepare his students. I mean, that's the teacher's job. So.
Yeah, and I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest challenges as teachers for us. And I think all of our teachers and all of our math ed classes are really been stressing that point where your goals that you want to have in your class, you also have to teach your students in the way that will make them achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Because you can't just teach one way and expect your students to know what you want.
Right.
You have to teach them what you want, and then they'll achieve your goals. And so, I guess from here on out, I guess just one cognitive effort Kevin and I can make at Bloxburg High School is, okay, how can I instruct the students we work with in order to give the desired response that I want. You know, what are some specific words maybe, or some methods, or you know, some questions we can ask that help the student ask. And actually, our teacher today was really interesting. She asked us a question that was kind of like, you know, she was like, oh, what is like the next possible step
Yeah,
in this problem?
I can't remember exactly how she posed it, but she was like, what are some conditions that we need to assume for like before we go through with this problem? But like the way she presented it, like a couple kids like blurted out answers right away, and then she like stopped herself and she was like, wait a minute, that was a bad teaching method. I shouldn't ask a question that only has one specific response. And this was just like a general discussion question, but it's kind of interesting to think about. Like she had the answer that she wanted in her head, but the way that she posed the question like didn't allow for that question to really for the answer to be like in our head. So like we were giving her answers, but it wasn't answers that she wanted. So she was like, well, hold on, let me re-ask the question. So I guess that's another thing that we need to prepare ourselves for. And this is just like everyday discussions, just like asking questions or open-ended questions that don't limit themselves only to one answer. Like they have to be open to a wide range of answers so that the discussion can actually take hold and progress.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just kind of cool that she caught herself right away, and then we have to be careful with that too. But I think that about concludes it for this week of the Baker Nichols Show. And Kevin and I will see you guys next week for Baker Nichols Show episode 9.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Yeah.